There's nothing like cracking that cellophane and pulling that record out. It just smells great.
Welcome to BODS Mayhem Hour.
Non-stop hardcore energy.
I love the show, guys. You're awesome.
Unlike any other.
With your host, John the Bod, a.k.a. the Bod Father.
Man, this stuff rocks.
Hey there, this is Tom Coyne, drummer extraordinaire from 45 Grave, the Pendejos of Doom, and my new project, Feast, and you are listening to BODS Mayhem Hour.
The views and opinions of the guests do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of BODS Mayhem Radio Network, its staff, affiliates, or sponsors. Parental discretion is advised. Welcome to BODS Mayhem Radio Network.
Hey everybody, welcome to BODS Mayhem Hour. I'm your host, John the Bod, aka the Bod Father, and as always, I am bringing you guys and gals awesome interviews. Today it's an honor and a huge privilege to welcome Tom Coyne, drummer of Feast. Also, he was part of Pendejos of Doom. Is that correct? Did I say that correct? Pendejos of Doom?
Pendejos of Doom, that's correct.
All right, I got it right. Pendejos of Doom and the mighty 45 Grave. Tom has released a new track entitled King of Kings, which is also in Hebrew, King of Kings. So, with his new project, Feast. So we're going to be talking about that. Also, for all of my horror fans and horror punk rock friends out there, listen, 45 Grave, Party Time zombie version, made it onto the movie soundtrack for The Return of the Living Dead. That's right, George Romero's Return of the Living Dead. Party Time made full rotation on MTV in 1984, and the song Evil debuted on MTV's The Cutting Edge in 1985. So, rest in peace, George Romero, my friend. Your movies still live on. They still make a huge impact today, and for the ones who say that it doesn't, then you are totally, totally missing out on one of the horror's icon, as I should say. So, Tom, how's it going, man?
Absolutely, man. I'm good. I'm just trying to live through this zombie apocalypse that we're living in now. But I'm used to that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's getting a little bit ridiculous. I'm ready for this shit to be over. You know, I'm sure everybody else is too.
Yeah. We all thought it would be over by summer. We'd be back to gigging again. But looks like it's going to be next year. There's nothing happening with live gigs anyway.
So how have you been doing, man? And what have you been doing during the pandemic other than talking and promoting your new track, which is out right now? Let's talk about that a little bit.
Well, the thing about it is it's all because of the pandemic, really, that all this is getting done. A long time ago, I had these drum ideas, and I had a singer that was like an opera kind of singer. We did a gig in, 1995. And the idea was I was going to record this stuff, and it was just going to be drums and vocals over the top, sort of like The Creatures, which is a band that Susie, it was a side project from Susie and the Banshees, where it was just drumming and singing. So we were going to do something like that. I was working on that last year in 2019, and I recorded the tracks, and we were doing editing and all that kind of stuff. But when the pandemic happened, I thought, well, I'll just send these finished drum tracks around to different people and let them play with them. Everybody I know now can record at home. 10 years ago, even before that, nobody could. So you had to go to a studio, and it cost lots of money. Now you just send files around, and people do it on their laptops. So I know all these people around the country that I know from touring and from doing conventions and stuff like that, horror cons and Dragon Con in Atlanta and things like that. So I just sent the tracks around, and what you're hearing is the end result of that sort of online collaboration with people that I'm not in the same room with, but we're able to trade music.
Here's the weird part with all of this. Do you think that this is actually going to take away the producer after all of this is said and done? Because, this has pretty much made bands just do it themselves, DIY, pretty much.
Yeah. It's complicated. A lot of bands that do their own records, they have enough engineering experience to record themselves, but the quality isn't going to be as high as if you use someone that's a professional engineer. In sort of the punk scene, you hear all these records and they sound like demos because they pretty much are. because they've been done on GarageBand or on little cassette players. But that was cool for punk because you would trade tapes, and part of the allure of it was the lo-fi aspect of it, right? But for the stuff I'm doing, I use a real studio and a real engineer. Once we get all the tracks from everybody, then I have an actual seasoned pro mix it and master it and all that. Just because I can mix stuff, but it's never going to sound as good as someone who does that for a profession. So it just depends on if you've got a budget at all, or what kind of quality you're shooting for, I suppose.
I laughed because you said that just put on a tape recorder and go. I remember when I was playing music in high school with my band, that's exactly what we did. We just put a recorder up in the middle of the room and said, fuck it, let's go.
Right. And some of that stuff sounds awesome.
Oh, it does. It does.
Right? I mean, It depends on the kind of band it is, obviously, but for punk or like garage rock or even the 45 Grave Legacies, their first record was a big studio album, but the second one they put out, called Autopsy, was rehearsal tapes mostly. And this is like from 1979 or so. And they were just recording themselves on a 4-track in Dinah Cancer's aunt's garage. That was their studio. And for a lot of people, they prefer that sound to the big, rock produced, records. More raw sometimes.
So Feast began in 1995, correct? And correct me if I'm wrong too. It was inspired by Terry Bozzio's melodic playing in the 90s. Is that correct or no?
Yeah. So in the drumming community, it was a big deal in the mid-90s when Terry Bozzio used to be in Frank Zappa's band, and he was in Missing Persons in the 80s. I think that's where most people know him. And he was always a great soloist, but in the mid-90s, he started touring as a solo act where he just played this ginormous drum set, but he played little songs. Like they were like little percussive classical pieces that one guy was playing. It sounded like 6 drummers playing. So that was a big movement in that period. And there are a few guys who've kind of been doing it ever since. So I was really into that at the time, but I was also really into this gothic rock scene that I was in then. So it's kind of the mix of the two things I was into in the 90s. That stuff's just hard to play, so it takes a long time to learn. Not 25 years, but that took a long time just because it took a long time to get to. But if you're someone that likes to practice and spend a lot of time playing, this kind of stuff is fun because it takes a bit of time to get your limbs around.
This piece started as a drum solo, which and I hope I pronounced their names correctly here, Macias added to in April of 2020. This is their first recorded work together since coming together in 1992, man. So let's talk about that just a little bit. How important is this coming together for them?
So it's a pretty crazy story. This singer, Heather Macias, I was in a band with her in 1992 for about 9 months. And this particular band was really influenced by Dead Can Dance, which you can totally hear in our work. And she's like kind of like a goth alto voice, but she sings like her voice is an instrument, right? And what's interesting about her is she's Jewish, so she writes her lyrics in Hebrew. So when you're listening to the song, you're not listening to the words really, because unless you speak Hebrew, I guess. Right? So you just listen to it like it's a synth or a horn or whatever instrument you think it sounds like. But you don't get stuck listening to the words. So I hadn't talked to her or seen her since 1992, but we knew each other online. So when this idea came up, I wrote her and said, "Hey, are you still singing? And can you record yourself?" And she says, "Oh yeah, my husband and I have a project when they do sort of like Jewish spiritual music, which sounds like Dead Can Dance with their own lyrical bent on it." So I said, "Oh yeah, he could play on it." I didn't know who he was, this guy Mario, her husband. But so I sent the track off, and I had no idea this guy was a great, great guitar player and great writer. So when they got the tracks back, I was completely floored, because I thought it was just going to be, like an accompaniment to her singing. And he turned it into this big production with I think 16 tracks of music he sent back. So I was really stoked by that because it became more of a commercial song rather than just me playing drums and having singing over it. So it turned into something else than I originally thought.
So see, folks, I apologize. And I'm not disrespecting nobody. I cannot pronounce the name of this track that's in Hebrew. So I just say it's King of Kings, which that's what it means in Hebrew. So
that's what it means.
There you go. It's King of Kings. So.
The name is it's a mouthful. It's Melech Malchei Ha'melechim. It's kind of like the Lord's Prayer in synagogue. That's a phrase they all use. There's many songs with that title. If you put it in YouTube, there's like 30 songs.
Oh wow!
So it's like a traditional phrase, but it means King of Kings. But it's funny, I just call it Melech because the rest of it's too much to spit out.
Yeah, and like I said, no disrespect because I didn't want to say anything wrong, and they'll be like, "Oh, look, he can't pronounce it. Look at him." I'm just saying what I'm saying. It's King of Kings in Hebrew. There we go.
Right.
Tom, these tracks, man, that are being released for Feast, are they going to be released one at a time? Are we looking at an EP down the road or an album? What's going through your mind possibly?
Yeah. Traditionally you would do a bunch of songs, and like the Pendejos of Doom, the other project I'm in, we did 6 songs and did an EP and released it on Bandcamp and Spotify and everywhere else. And that's what people traditionally do. But I had been reading a bunch of music blogs over the last few years about how to do online music and stuff. And one of the ideas that kept coming up was that if you release a bunch of songs all at once, you get people's attention for that couple weeks. And then with the online environment, you're out of the loop, a month later, because there's so much stuff coming out. Just look at any heavy metal website. There's bands and bands and bands and bands, and then your content is old news, 5 days later. So it's hard to keep in people's rotation. So I thought I'll just do a track, release it, let it hang out for a while, then I'll do one like every 3 or 4 months. So by the end of the year, I'll have an EP out essentially, but I'm just going to leak them out every so often so I can stay in front of people's screens essentially.
So see, man, things are not like they used to be. The good old days, as I call them, because when you'd have to wait on your band to put out an album. See, those were the good old days. You had to go look at a magazine and find out stuff.
Right, or you'd be like looking for the release date, or records used to come out on Tuesdays.
Yeah.
So you'd go to the record store on Tuesday and see if the new Iron Maiden came out or whatever it was. But it's all different now because everything is accessible all the time. Mm-hmm. So you got to play it in a sort of different way. Yeah, and the other thing is, this all costs money and time. So I've got to spread it out so I can get it done. Otherwise, it's too big of a hill to climb. It'll take 5 years to finish.
How long have you been sitting on these tracks to release? Or are these all new? Are these older? How many are, you said there's 6 that's written so far, right? Right.
It's a mix. So for instance, I wrote these 2 songs, if you want to call them that, in 1995, and then sat on them until last year, until 2019. I thought, okay, I'm good. You know how every year you're like, I'm going to do this this year. Well, in 2019, I'm like, I'm going to get these damn songs done because I might get hit by a truck tomorrow, and that'll be it. So I booked studio time last August, and we tracked these 2 songs in like a little solo. We worked on them for until now. So the first one was finished in April, and May. We released it on June 12th. And then the second one I just mixed yesterday, actually. So that's about 90% done. And we'll put that out probably in September. And then they actually have a third track that's already finished with the same people, with Heather and Mario. Now that one, those drums are about 10 years old. I actually did a session about 10 years ago with a friend of mine named Byron Brown. He's got a home studio. And we just went and played for an afternoon. I had a bunch of ideas, and he just recorded me for a day. Some of it was for another project that never got going. So I had all this stuff also. So I sent that to Mario, and 2 weeks later, he sent me a full song again. So that one's kind of in the hopper. I'll need to remix it still, but I know that's there. So that'll be around the first of the year if I keep my 3-month timetable. And then in the meantime, there's there's about 3 or 4 other new ideas I have that I still need to track. So it's kind of an ongoing, get one done, release it, get another one done, release it again.
So is Heather and Mario, are they going to do the rest of these, or do you have some other plans with the rest of these songs?
No. So part of the thing, my original idea was to send it to lots of people and have lots of people involved. I don't know if you remember this band Pigface from the 90s. They were like an industrial rock supergroup, and led by one guy, led by Martin Atkins, who was a drummer in Ministry. Mm-hmm. But he was an engineer and he had a studio, so he would just make records with all sorts of whoever was around. And they would tour every couple of years, and it was a completely different lineup. Every record they did had a different lineup. So it's kind of like that, where just whoever finishes the song verse, we'll fix it up and we'll put it out. So the song I was mixing yesterday is a completely different group of people that are mostly from Seattle, out of the steampunk scene. So what's weird about that one is it's another married couple who is a singer and then an instrumentalist named Paul and Mel Maiden. And she's another one. She's an opera singer. So when you hear her sing, it's like a flute. It's crazy. She has this really high, wide range. Mm-hmm. She can sing really high and really loud. And Paul plays guitar and keyboards and bass. He's mainly a bass player. Well, I've mainly worked with him as a bass player. So he wrote music to my track, and I'm adding other people. We added some violin from my friend Nathan, who's in Rhode Island, and I'm going to add some other stuff from a guy who's in Oregon. So there's people all over, and they just send me the files, and me and my engineer piece it together. So it's pretty cool. It's like a band without a band.
So anybody on that bucket list that you're trying to get on to doing your songs possibly, man? I know you got to have one person at least.
It's funny you ask that. I do, but they don't know about it yet. But I do. There's someone in our sort of LA goth rock scene. Now, before you ask, it's not dying of cancer. That crossed my mind, but if I do that, then it becomes, then it becomes a 45 Grape thing, and we would do it that way. But for this, I do have another singer who's in that same ballpark, but I haven't approached him yet. But I know her and her husband, who they're sort of pillars of the scene out here. But I do have a track in mind for them that I think would be good. I also found a singer online who's in Chile, who's like a Susie and the Banshees clone type thing. So that might turn into something also. I'm not sure yet about that one yet. I'm going to keep mixing it up.
What's impressed or excited you the most so far making the new songs for Feast, man, if anything? Well, what's standing out more to you possibly right now?
Initially I would say, wow, my drums sound really cool. The parts are really cool. And I was happy to get them done. But the stuff people have written to it has really blown me away. When I first got the stuff back from Mario and Heather, I was like, wow, I could not have done any of that by myself. There's no way. And I know the stuff I got from Paul and Mel is the same thing. There's no way I would have been able to do that. Or, what happens with drummers. Now, let me ask you, do you play an instrument? Are you in bands or?
The only thing I did, man, was I sung, and I couldn't sing Mary Had a Little Lamb for you. So. Oh,
okay. So you'll get this when you're in a band. You're jamming all together, and you're kind of listening to the bass line, or you're listening to the riff, and you're trying to fit in with it. What happens with drummers is you say, "Hey, I got this cool beat. Let's make a song out of it," and then you play along, but nobody really listens to what the drummer's playing. They just play whatever they're playing, like simultaneously as the drums, and then the drummer ends up having to change his part to fit what the other people wrote, right? Mm-hmm. So your original idea is out the window, because that's typically how it works in rock bands anyway. So with this, I'm sending them the completed, partially mixed down drum track, so they can't change what I played. So I had some control over it. You know what I mean?
It's like, oh.
So that part of it's kind of cool. You know, it's
no,
the only way to really get your idea in.
Oh, no one listens to the drummer. Oh.
It's true, man. That's why we're way in the back.
Are there any tracks standing out more to you than any right now that you're working on? I know it must change every time you listen to it or even you talk about it, but are there any that stick out for you possibly that you could talk about?
Yeah, this second track, it's more of a sort of tribal tom-tom groove like you'd hear in goth music. And it comes from the other big influence, which is the Susie and the Banshees kind of influence. Their drummer, Budgie, is a huge influence on me. But it's interesting because it comes across really sort of dark and kind of menacing sounding. It's not a dance track by any means, but since it's in 5/4 time, it kind of has this dark African sort of menacing kind of pulse to it. It's not as easy a flavor as the first track, I would say. You know, like we were listening to it yesterday. It's not as it's flavorful, but it's a darker flavor. It's like dark chocolate versus sweet chocolate, if that makes sense. When we're done here, I'll send it to you. You'll know what I'm talking about. So It's just a different part of the palette. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
The different mood. With this thing, it's all about moods more than, heavy riffs or playing really fast or playing lots of solos and stuff. It's more just really thick kind of visual audio moods.
So let's go back and talk about this just a little bit because I noticed that your confidence, man, is just out the roof when you were talking about this. Like getting the good responses back from folks after you were releasing King of Kings and some other stuff. Mm-hmm. How much confidence has that given you to add more stuff and put more stuff out there like this?
It's been really good. I was surprised by the press people I've talked to. Most of them honestly have been from like the punk or metal community, but everybody really likes the song. Because like I said, it's a big, thick mood, right? And most of us that are into this dark stuff, if it's horror movies or horror punk or any of this kind of dark zombie movies, we don't like it because we're happy-go-lucky people generally, right? Mm-hmm. You kind of get into this stuff because you're either sensitive or you're affected by stuff or you're generally kind of sad or whatever. Being around goth people as long as I have, I realize none of us are normal. That's why we're here, right? If you were normal people, we'd be into pop music or something. So it's been cool because everybody that I've talked to has been really positive about it. So it makes me feel like I'm on a good path, but it also makes me think, since I'm at the beginning of this, I want to fight off the temptation to keep doing songs that are just like that. I do want to make sure I mix it up. Every couple tracks is going to be some other style, so I can keep doing it. Because if you do one style for too long, for a couple of years, you go, okay, that's what he is, and that's it. So I'll only listen to that guy when I want to be in such and such a mood. So I want to try. Like I've got an industrial rock track in the works, and another one that's sort of like a funky kind of off time thing, and they'll all be under the same name, so that way I'm not pigeonholed into one style. But it's given me the confidence to be able to mix it up, I guess.
These new tracks, though, Tom, is it still challenging you or pushing you to come up with something new and stay fresh with stuff for Feast that you want to work on?
Yeah, like a couple of them are just in my head now. So this one in particular that I was kind of alluding to that I kind of have a singer in mind for, it's something I have to learn to play well enough that it sounds, that it's at a level where I'm comfortable putting it out in front of people. Because it's stuff's not easy to play. So most of my practice time is trying to get this stuff to where it's acceptable to me to be able to put out. I mean, I could just, like you said, set up a digital recorder in my practice room and say, hey, here's my drum track, yay. But lots of people do that. That's, you go on YouTube and Instagram, and there's a million guys in their practice rooms showing off how, their chops and stuff, which is great, but that's not what I'm trying to do. So I need, for some of this stuff, I need to keep woodshedding to the point where I'm like, okay, I think I can record it now, and I'll be happy with it. Because, I am sort of pushing this, so I want a lot of people to see and hear it. So I got to make sure it's good enough before I do that. Otherwise, I would just put it on my Instagram page for other drummers to stare at,
Dave Klein, is he going to be mixing and recording all these tracks that's going to be coming out, or what's going on with that?
So far, yeah. Dave, what's good about him is he's a drummer. He was in Agent Orange for almost 10 years. He just got out of that band this past year because his studio's so busy. He had to kind of make a choice between being a touring guy and being a studio engineer, because he does a lot of punk and punk adjacent kind of records. But it's cool. His studio's got his drum sets set up. I can just show up and play. I don't have to bring all my stuff and set it up for a day and all that kind of thing. And we speak the same language, so it's not like I have to explain, the way the cymbal sounds. And he's got all this cool gear and stuff I can play on. And we're friends, so it works out pretty well. I think what I'm going to do with him is, no matter where the tracks come from, I'll always mix and master them with him. So at least I know the quality is going to be the same. Like I said, he can mix a lot better than I can. And we have a good sort of groove going with these things. So it'll be him for a while, I think.
Agent Orange. Great band. Love their music. Bloodstains,
Yeah.
Too Young to Die. What else? Everything Turns Gray.
Yeah, all that.
God.
Yeah, those first two records especially are need to be in everybody's collection. But you got to buy them from them. Because they were on labels that weren't good to them. So if you're going to buy their stuff, get it at a show. That's true with most punk bands.
What do you hope everyone takes away, or a message you hope they hear while listening to any Feast's music in general? Well, what do you hope someone takes away from it, Tom?
For this stuff, it's interesting that you asked that. I have a friend of mine who wrote me, and he says, this stuff makes me connect with my spirituality. I was like, wow, that's pretty heavy. I wasn't trying to do that, But usually when you put out music, you just want people to say, to enjoy it for what it is. And once in a while, they'll give you a like on Facebook or whatever, so you feel like you got acknowledgement. When you're not doing gigs, you're not in front of people, so you don't get to see them, throw their fists in the air or dance or headbang or whatever it is you're doing for that music. For this, really, it's just that if they can enjoy the mood of the track for 5 minutes and have something nice to say, that's great. If I never hear from them, that's great too. You know what I mean? Because once you put music out, it kind of belongs to the listener more than the artist at that point. Well, something I love to see, actually, one of my original intents was I could see this kind of stuff being used like in belly dance or in like yoga class, that kind of thing, because this is the kind of music you hear at those places. And I've been on a couple records that people play at belly dance shows that the girls dance to. So that would be good, but you never know. You put this stuff out there and you just kind of see where it ends up. It's hard to say, oh, I want this song to be used at the beginning of football games. A lot of people have written songs with that intention, but the public picks which songs get used for that kind of thing. Megadeth had a song they wanted to use at hockey games. I don't know if that ever happened.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I did not know that. Probably. I'm surprised that, oh, wow, Paradise City's being played like crazy at some of these games. And Welcome to the Jungle. And I'm going, oh, my God.
Right.
I never imagined in a million years that would even be at a game. It's like, wow.
Well, like you're a baseball fan, right?
Yeah.
So each guy comes up and he has a song they play as they come up to bat.
Yeah.
So it would be great if they played Party Time when the guy comes up to bat. But see, that's happened with 45 Graves actually multiple times, where we've heard a commercial for a video game and they were playing Party Time. We're like, oh, that's interesting. who got paid for that, you know?
Yeah. And now you see Rat doing a Geico commercial now. You see Motley Crue doing one. I mean, it's wild. I'm going, holy shit. Back in the day, no one would never touch this. No one.
That's one of the few ways they can make money now. You know, Led Zeppelin wouldn't go on TV at all because they wanted you to buy the record. So they wouldn't go on Top of the Pops and put out a single because they're like, no, man, you gotta buy the whole record for $5 or whatever they were then. Where now, well, especially now, there's no touring, but nobody makes money for records. So if Rat wants to make $500,000, they got to license their song to a national commercial. It's just a different way of making money.
Are you wanting to take this out on the road, or you just want to just make the music and put it out there? What's going on with that?
You know, for this thing, the way I could see it happening as like a sort of minstrel type arrangement at conventions. Like, you know, you've been to horror cons before?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, love them. Absolutely love them.
Yeah. So I've done a lot of those horror cons. There's Dragon Con in Atlanta, which is like every con all in one. There's Comic Con. There's all these cons. And a lot of these people I'm playing with on this project, I know through that community. So I can see Feast being a project that you see playing in the lobby of the Atlanta Hilton during horror conventions with whoever's in the room. So what I mean by that is these grooves and stuff I can play them and people can just play over them. They don't have to play my particular song that I put out on a record. They can just improvise over it. And that happens a lot at these kind of events. So I can see that working. With the people I'm working with now, none of them really can tour or travel for that matter because of health reasons and work and things like that. So if I were to get together a solid group of people here, I might do that, but that's a ways off. But you might see me playing, like I said, some borrowed drum set at Comic Con next year in the lobby.
What made you want to become a musician, Tom? What was it spark for you that possibly said, yeah, I want to try this or I want to do this?
My brother was a drummer, and he was 15 years older than me. So when I was an infant, he was in the garage playing with his band in the late 60s. So as you do when you're 5, you follow your older brother around and try to copy him. So that's exactly what I did. So I had a drum kit when I was about 3, maybe. I've seen pictures. I think I'm about 3. And they tell me they would put me in the room when he was playing with his band, and I would just kind of like try to follow along. I don't remember any of this, but that's what they tell me. Maybe it's just a story. I don't know. Yeah, but then I put it down until middle school. So yeah, my family raised 2 drummers, and neither of my parents are musical. I don't know where it comes from, but that's what happened to me.
Is there a country that stands out or shocks you that Feast gets support from, or your music is getting played in right now, possibly? Have you seen any statistics that's kind of like blown you away, maybe, possibly?
You know, I haven't looked at that deeply. Because of 45 Grave, I know people all over. So I have a lot of friends in Chile who dig it a lot. There's a huge goth scene there. 45 Grave played there in 2015 and 2017. And there's, you know how Latin American countries are. They're passionate about something. They're super passionate. Mm-hmm. And that's how they are there. It's just like Mexico too. Huge dark wave scene there. So a lot of my friends there like it a lot because that's right in their alley. You know, kind of serious, emotional, kind of dark music. But I haven't, seen emails from, Uruguay or, Palestine yet. That might be coming because of the title of the song.
I know you had a lot of music when you were growing up, man, but did you have a go-to album or a song when you were younger that just made you escape or made you feel like things were going to be better? Did you possibly have that, maybe?
Yeah, when I was really young, I really liked the Beatles because that was in our house. Again, my older brother was all into that kind of stuff. But when I got into music and started playing and got into bands, this is in the early 80s, like 1980, basically when I started playing drums. I was really into the sort of 70s arena rock of that period before punk happened. So even now, if I'm on a desert island, I'm going to listen to my Led Zeppelin collection before I listen to anything else. Yeah, and that's the stuff like if I'm sad, I'm going to listen to T for One, or if I'm energetic, I'm going to listen to Trampled Underfoot, or that's my go-to pretty much. I don't know why it was them, because I never saw them. They were before my time. But that's the stuff I always go to. Absolutely.
So correct me if I'm wrong. July 17th of this month marked 38 years ago that you guys played with Black Flag, 45 Grave was there, of course, you guys, DOA, Descendants, Husker Du, and UXB. I want to talk about this just a little bit because you've done some amazing things here with 45 Grave. Are there any show from being with 45 Grave that sticks out the most for you? What was the most fun or most memorable show that you had possibly, man?
One thing to remember is 45 Grave has been around since 1979.
Sure.
I wasn't the original drummer in 45 Grave. That was Don Bowles, who was in the Germs prior to that. So that era, from 79 to 84, was all different people except for Dinah Cantor, the singer. Mm-hmm. I've been with her since 2008. So I'll tell you a funny story about that. You're talking about being younger. When I was in high school, there was a car in our neighborhood that had a 45 Grave sticker on it. It was the goat's head with the pentagram that said Black Cross on the top. And we would literally walk around this car when we're walking to school and back. We were afraid of it. And then 15 years later, I'm in the room with Dinah Cantor and we're playing Black Cross. But to answer your question, we played a show in Leipzig, Germany in 2015 for this big festival there. It's called Wave Gothic Treffen. It's the biggest goth festival and one of the biggest goth festivals in Europe. And the guitar player we had at the time couldn't go because we were flying through Canada. We had a layover in Canada. And this guy had a criminal record, so he couldn't go into Canada. He can get in, but he wasn't going to get sent out. They would send him back home.
Oh, God.
So we find this out about 2 or 3 weeks before the gig. So I had been gigged in England a lot with prior bands, so I knew some people there. So I'm asking around, hey, who could we hire to sit in with us at this big giant gig we're doing for 2,000 people? And I found this guy named Tom O'Connor who was in Germany. He was a fan, and he was going to be at that festival with this other band. And he learned all of our stuff in 3 weeks. He would send me tapes or, send me MP3s. And we got to Germany. We went to the hotel. We ran through the set with him in the hotel room. And the next day got on stage and played the show, the headlining show in this big. And he I wouldn't say he was 100%, but he was like 90% perfect. This guy was so good. And he was just so happy to be there. And,
oh man,
you know what I mean? And he was like the hometown guy. His other band was headlining this other bigger room at the same festival. So yeah, this dude, Tom O'Connor, just showed up and played all of our songs. And then we said goodnight and we got in the car, went to the airport and flew home.
Dude, you guys probably made his life right there. That's it. He's done.
Yeah, he was just such a stud. He was able to do it.
Folks, you want to get out and pick up Feast's new tracks when they come out. Tom, how can folks stay in touch with you? Pick up these tracks and this EP once it does come out. Whatever you're going to do with everything with all this. How can they do all this, sir?
They can go to Bandcamp. That's where if you go. Well, obviously I'm on Facebook and there's an Instagram page and a Twitter page. But most of my action's on Facebook. The tracks, you can watch the video on YouTube. You just Google Feast with an exclamation point at the end. Or put in that word Melech and it'll pop up every time. But if you go to the Feast Facebook page, which is just Facebook at Feast with an exclamation point at the end, you can find everything. As time goes on, there'll just be, what you'll see is more tracks on that same Bandcamp page until there's an album's worth. and you'll likely see multiple versions of each song. Because like I was saying, I sent the same tracks out to multiple people. So as they finish them, I'll stick them on the same page. So it'll be kind of cool because there could be more music there than just one finished song per idea, if that makes sense. And when in doubt, you can always just go to the 45 Grave Facebook page, and everything's linked off of there. That's the easiest place to find all things Tom and all things Dinah and all things 45 Grave.
Before I let you go, good sir, would you care to do a promo for my show?
Sure. Hey there, this is Tom Coyne, drummer extraordinaire from 45 Grave, the Pendejos of Doom, and my new project Feast, and you were listening to BODS Mayhem Hour.
Everybody stick around. We got some great stuff coming up. You only hear these interviews right here on BODS Mayhem Hour and BODS Mayhem Hour podcast. Please get out and check out our Facebook page. It has our podcast link, YouTube link, and all the links that we are associated with. And trust me, we are all over the platforms just about. So keep tuned to everything that we're doing. Also, you want to get out and check out Tom's new project, Feast, and all the other stuff that he has going on with this band right now. So get out and check him out, folks, and give him some support. Also, it's Christmas in July here on BODS Mayhem Hour, so rock around that Christmas tree. And, you know, hey, if there's mistletoe and she don't want to kiss you, I'm sorry. You know, mistletoe don't work all the time. You know, you have to be like me, and then it works all the time. Well, not necessarily all the time for me, but anyway, I'm blabbing. But Merry Christmas in July. So, also to all the essential workers, true essential workers, we are behind you still. We are not giving up on this. Hopefully soon we'll be able to get back to doing what we're doing best. So, Tom, man, I wish you nothing but the best of luck. And, hey, anytime you want back on here, just let me know.
Thank you so much, brother. It's been a pleasure.
You're listening to BODS Mayhem Hour.
Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.